Hey, what up, Long Beach? Welcome back to your home for everything local sports. It's JJ.
And Mike, and this special edition of Long Beach Sports Talk, the Black and Gold Long Beach State edition, is brought to you by the sponsors of everything we do at our various websites and newspapers, Naples Rib Company and Papa Lucci's, both down in Belmont Shore. They put the Eid in 2nd Street.
That's right, Mike. It is the Black and Gold edition of LBST. We're talking everything Long Beach State. We just so happen to be recording this show as Jared Weaver and Jason Vargas, two former dirtbags, are going head-to-head in the American League Divisional Series Game 1 in Anaheim.
I think I'd like to actually just let people think this is a throwback edition of the show where we were just hanging out at your place watching baseball and decided to record this podcast.
It's so cool, those two guys, teammates in the 2004 Dirtbag season. They went to the Super Regionals, actually the last team from Long Beach State to go to the Super Regionals. Vargas was the number 2 pitcher behind Weaver. Obviously, Weaver stealing all of the headlines that year.
Yes.
First game I saw Jared Weaver, he struck out 10 straight USC Trojans in the muck and the mire of a Tuesday night start at Blair Field. It was just fantastic. But Vargas led that team in hitting. Right. Being the second best pitcher. Gotta love college baseball.
Unfortunately, doesn't get to swing the stick against Weaver tonight, though. That would have been a showstopper.
I was talking to Troy Buckley earlier today, and we were laughing about that. Of course, Weave still holds to this day that he can swing the stick a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're recording in the 4th inning, so if you're listening to this show, obviously after the game is over, don't tell us what happened, please.
Yeah, no spoiler alerts. There is plenty of stuff to go around and talk about at Long Beach State. You can look at the men's golf team who just took 3rd place at a huge tournament in Indiana with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish hosting that thing. But there's plenty of stuff going on back in California, too.
Well, for one thing, they're currently ripping up one of their facilities. The track is coming apart, being ripped up and torn out so they can put in a new, beautiful facility that we've gotten to take a look at. The renderings and the plans for that, which I think it will be right there with Vets, even above that as the top track facility in Long Beach. And for a city that's known for its track athletes, I'm excited about that, not just for Long Beach State, but for the high school kids in the area to be able to say, hey, we've got a college here. I mean, the track they were running on wasn't even competition legal. So that's a much-needed upgrade for a team that's been dominating the Big West recently on the men's side, and we're happy to see that happening.
They're hiring some good coaches over there, too, for the running distance and track team.
Yes, for sure. They had to get a new distance coach in there, and they picked a good one. Things definitely looking up for the 49ers.
Also in men's water polo, the 49ers are ranked in the top 10. They have been for most of the season. Obviously, the big-time MPSF conference schedule still coming up for the Black and Gold, but they have got some really good experience back on that team, and head coach Gavin Arroyo hopes that they can turn things around and really make some noise very close to last year, hoping to get over the hump this year.
But I think if we're being honest with each other and with the listeners, the fall is all about the women at Long Beach State and always has been.
No lie.
We'll get to volleyball and soccer in a second, but worth mentioning the tennis team. We really pay much more attention to them in the spring because that's when their Big West season is. But they are a fall-spring sport, just like track does some indoor stuff in the fall. Tennis has a little slate of competition in the fall. And when I introduced Jenny Hill Costello, their longtime coach at the Century Club a couple weeks ago, I pointed out this is secretly the most dominant dynasty at Long Beach State right now.
Maybe in the entire Big West.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not a big spectator sport. You know, I mean, the stands don't hold 5,000 people over at the Rhodes Tennis Center at Long Beach State. But, yeah, they win these conference titles year in, year out. They've got a great one right now in Maiva Razakasoa.
Nice.
Who is, thanks, nailed it. Stuck the landing. She was the Conference Freshman of the Year and Conference Player of the Year last year, which says a lot about her. Obviously, a highly anticipated sophomore campaign coming up, and she's already got it going with a bang here in the fall. Knocked off a top 100 player over in that All-American tournament that she was competing in. So very exciting stuff. She's definitely putting herself up there with the big names, and we still got basically 3 seasons with her. So I'm excited to see how far she can go.
I think that team can go all the way yet again. They still haven't gotten over that hump, speaking of getting over humps, in the NCAAs, but they continue to just dominate that Big West.
Oh, yeah, they're dominating it, and they've had some NCAA wins. You feel like they're poised for a run,
Definitely.
Deep run, and which brings us to the Long Beach State women's soccer team, who had that Elite 8 run that was kind of I'd say the lightning rod, really the biggest memory we've got of the fall sports for the last 10 years or so at Long Beach State.
Yeah, I would agree.
And they sort of feel like they're on that same brink. You know, like you said, they're dominating the conference. and then you sort of need some momentum and maybe even a little bit of luck to get that national level run.
Well, you need
certainly have the pieces to do it.
You need luck in soccer at all times.
Yeah.
No matter the level.
You need luck to get a draw sometimes, as all of the Evertonian fans out there can attest. JJ.
Without question, Mike. We've been around Long Beach State for a while as students and then as journalists, and we've been through these fall seasons, and sometimes on a university campus you can kind of feel the ebb and flow of a season. I can remember how hot the basketball teams were a couple years back when they both ended up going to the conference finals. And right now you look at the women's soccer and the women's volleyball team at Long Beach State, two teams where we kind of saw that Elite Eight run coming a little bit with the returning seniors that they had. A few years earlier, we saw the Great Eight senior class coming and how good they were going to be. We kind of saw Long Beach State women's volleyball set up to have a tough season when all of those preseason injuries happened a few years back. This year, I don't feel like I have a grasp on either team.
And they've shown that in matches so far. The Long Beach State women's volleyball team has looked dominant at times, but when they've played ranked opponents, when they've played teams with great records, they haven't been able to get wins against them. And their head coach, Brian DeMolaro, who's in his 30th season, so I assume he knows what he's talking about, he pointed out, he said, obviously when you play a good team, it's harder to do things well across the board because they serve better, they block better, they hit better, they dig better, etc. But he said, and again, I trust him, I wasn't in Bakersfield or Illinois to necessarily know, he said the thing that's frustrating is, aside from what the other team is doing pressure-wise, we're playing worse against the better teams. Right? The things that Long Beach State can control, they weren't doing as good a job of against the better team. So he's frustrated because he didn't feel like he got a real good look during this non-conference schedule. In other words, he's feeling the same thing we're feeling.
Right.
But he's like, I'm not really sure where we're at right now because I don't feel like we had our best match against a great team and came up short or pulled the upset. We had our great matches against teams that we could have beat with not great matches.
Right, and he's got to get that settled right now because this weekend at home on Saturday, they're going to take on Cal State Northridge, a team they struggled with before, taking on who will likely be the favorite going down the stretch in the Big West, Hawaii.
I think you've got those three teams that you just mentioned, Long Beach State, Northridge, Hawaii, all atop the conference right now without having yet lost a match. And it's sort of a weird conference this year because Hawaii, since they came into the Big West, has been the overwhelming favorite. They've been nationally ranked. They are not really in that position this year. So I think you definitely say this is Long Beach State's best crack at them. They don't have to upset a top 20 team to beat Hawaii. They're basically on par with them. It's just this has been pointed out a lot by 49er fans that we see on the yellow board, the 49er message board. This team has struggled to win matches that they're supposed to win when they're up 2-1. They've struggled to get that 4-set victory and close teams out. And you just mentioned it. In the next 2 Saturdays, they're going to be hosting Northridge and Hawaii in the Pyramid. 2 wins there, and they put themselves in the driver's seat for the conference really early on with a 4-0 record. And I'm excited to see what happens. I think that Northridge match on Saturday will tell us a lot. And as you pointed out, the Hawaii match will too. Both games will be on ESPN3, so if you can't get to the Pyramid to see us, you can watch it that way.
And after the Northridge game, before the Hawaii match, local volleyball fans can see a familiar face and read a little bit more about T-Jack.
Yes, that's right. I've got a feature coming out on Tyler Jackson, who we've been watching for literally our entire careers.
Feels like forever, Mike.
She was, well, I know, I was laughing about it. I said, you can't be a senior in college. You know how old that makes me feel? Well, because our first year covering sports in Long Beach, the fall of 2008, first year covering sports together, she was a sophomore at Lakewood High School.
Yep.
So we saw her for 3 years at Lakewood. We've now seen her for 4 years at Long Beach State. And just a special player. I mean, I think she and Chisholm Opala sometimes. There's a couple players at Long Beach State right now that are worth the price of admission. And she's been great at the libero position so far this season. And, yeah, I'm excited to see what she can do because that's what they need against Northridge is Northridge doesn't have big terminators necessarily. They're not known for that. They're known for digging the ball, scrappy passing, and play. So that's what they're going to need, and Tyler Jackson's got to kind of be the locomotive for that, I think.
So very important Big West games all over campus this weekend. Women's volleyball we just talked about. Women's soccer going back to George Allen Field after back-to-back weird games.
Yeah.
We talked about how weird that game
They're not bummed to be starting Big West play right now.
No, Wake Forest a couple weeks back. It was just, everything was just kind of strange. And then we got another strange one on Sunday, disappointing in the end. Long Beach State ended up giving up 2 goals in the final 20 minutes of a loss to Santa Clara. Santa Clara Broncos just have the 49ers number, whatever it is. They lead the overall series like 1-6.
Yeah.
They've beaten them 4 straight times now. Last time Long Beach State beat Santa Clara in women's soccer was 1985. Whoa.
Well, you and I remember that very clearly.
Clearly,
right
yeah.
old age of 1 year old.
But on that Sunday, you've got the wind blowing really hard from Rhodes End, like we just talked about, the tennis center, to Carpenter End, which is on the side of the pyramid.
The north side.
And so the Broncos win the coin toss. They flip Long Beach State, so they're defending Rhodes End for the first half, which, honestly, I can't remember the last time that's happened. I don't know if that's because...
You would be the guy who would remember.
I don't know if that's because visitors don't care when they win the toss, or if that visitors always lose the toss.
It's usually not windy enough there for someone to use the toss.
That's also a good point.
Way, you know, I mean, it's there's certainly, you can have some weird weather stuff there, but it's not usually that strong of a wind because it was very strong on Sunday.
Very strong, and most teams like to stay on the side that they warm up on. So maybe since the visitors warm up on Rhodes End, they like to defend Rhodes End first. Either way,
it ended up being, I feel like, the decision that really decided the game, though.
Because when Long Beach State comes at Carpenter End, they are unstoppable. How many games have we seen won in the second half? How many overtime periods have been ended early?
Well, I can think of at least 4 games just in that Elite 8 season alone that ended over on that end. And you're right, because this time the tables were flipped completely upside down on them because that's exactly what Santa Clara did to them.
Yeah, well, Ashley Gonzalez did get the goal to put Long Beach State up, a classic Schmashley goal, because Agon does not care about the physicality of the soccer game. And then they switch sides, and you could just see ceiling to floor, Long Beach State taking the best shots from the Broncos without Mimi Akiogi able to defend there. And when Long Beach State's good, they come at you in those waves.
Right.
That defensive midfield is sitting right behind the forwards. And that defensive back line with girls like Akiogi and Taylor Nelson are able to take the ball and make things happen. Taylor Nelson, a former midfielder, now playing center back. So they are so dangerous when they're good. But like we saw in the second half with the Broncos with the wind at their back, gosh, without Akiogi out there, I think it's a very different game with Mimi in or out. Do you have an update on her for? It's day to day. It's a nagging ankle injury. Some of the fans may remember it from last year. Obviously, with something like that, with a player who is so active, it is kind of a situation where you want to see how they warm up rather than how they look on a Wednesday or a Thursday. But going forward, you need her.
Yes,
you need her real bad.
I think we saw that on Sunday. They need her.
It's unlucky to have to play the preseason favorite Cal Poly Mustangs in the first game, but that is what it is, and they get the good games at home, or the big games, I should say.
Right.
They play Cal Poly. They play UC Irvine at home this year.
Well, so we've seen some seasons for them in the Big West where, regardless of their floor or their ceiling, you go on the road, sometimes you get a funky call. They only play these teams once. So if you get a funky call on the road against, say, a good Santa Barbara team that happened a couple years ago, that's it. So it is good to have those games at home. I think that's a big advantage.
So they take on Cal Poly and UC Santa Barbara this weekend. Cal Poly Friday night, UC Santa Barbara Sunday night, both scheduled for a 6 o'clock first whistle. And then it's time to hit the road. And like Mike said, that's where your bread is buttered in the Big West. But you got no bread if you don't win at home, so they got to take care of business.
Right, you're just holding butter at that point.
You can catch all of that coverage from those soccer games and the volleyball game at GazetteSports.com and the Press Telegram. But moving forward, get involved, 49ers. On that yellow board we talked about is not the only place you can talk about Long Beach State sports. Shoot us a comment.
Hey, talk to us. We're cool.
Right? Shoot us a comment on any of these stories. Facebook, Twitter. Let us know what you think.
Email us. Text us.
Talk a little bit differently about college sports than we do about high school sports.
Right.
So we like to take advantage of stuff like that. We will see you on campus this weekend or next week. Get at us, 49er fans. This is your home for everything Long Beach State sports.